Okay, so today we have an 83 Trans Am with Crossfire, and we're going to rebuild the throttle bodies on it. This isn't really a how-to, it's just what all's involved in doing this. So it's a very fast video, but I thought you might want to see what all's involved. So the first thing we got to do is scrape this gasket so we can get the injector connector out of the throttle bodies. So we'll go ahead and peel that out, and then we'll take that off. Then we're going to do the fuel lines. Now I got to tell you, this is the worst part of the job. Sometimes they'll break free and sometimes they won't. There's four lines, or three lines, but four connections. You have your return, which I'm working on right now. That's on the driver's side. Then you have the crossover, which I'm trying to work on there. And then finally you have the fuel inlet that's on the passenger side as well. So I just broke loose the fuel inlet and got that to go. I can't seem to get the crossover pipe, so I'm going to go ahead and take the IAC valves out of the throttle bodies. This will give me a little bit more room to get the wrenches in there. Make sure that you use line wrenches or you're going to destroy it. Put a little penetrating oil in there, see if I can't break them free. I have had it where I've actually had to cut the line and use a socket to break them free. Fortunately, I saved the line on this one, but you know, these things are 40-some years old, and you just never know how it's going to go and who put them on last, right? So next we're going to take off the driver's side throttle body. There's two bolts and a stud. So the studs are on the outer edge of the throttle bodies. These are going to hold down the air cleaner assembly, right? Then we got to take out that linkage. We pop the throttle body up. It's sitting on two pins. Now we're going to disconnect that linkage in between the two throttle bodies. That's been a little stiff. It's once again, it's been on there for 40 years. Now we'll go ahead and take this thing apart and put it in the ultrasonic cleaner. And we'll go after the passenger side once I get this completely apart and starting to get clean, right? So not a whole lot to clean in these throttle bodies or rebuilding these throttle bodies. There's not a lot of parts and pieces to them. So we're going to take this first section off. I find it's way easier to clean the gaskets before you take it apart. We got to get the throttle position sensor out of there. Obviously, you don't want to put that in the ultrasonic cleaner. Next thing I'm going to do is drill out the plugs. There's three plugs that we have to get to, one on this driver's side and two on the passenger side. This one's actually been peened in there, so I had to chisel it a little bit and then drill it out. Now we'll go ahead and drop the throttle body down into the ultrasonic cleaner. Let that take a bath while we're finishing taking apart the rest of it. All right. So once again, we'll just scrape a little bit of the gaskets, and then we'll go and separate the two pieces, grab some more gaskets out of there, take the fuel injector out. That we just pry out with a little bit of leverage. It comes right off. Now the next thing we're going to go after is the fuel pressure regulator. Now this is on the driver's side. Passenger side has a pulse dampener. So you can see there it's got a plug in it. We're going to have to knock that plug out. Then you see on the driver's side it has a disc with a smaller disc in the center. That's what gives us the fuel pressure when we push up against that spring. We'll get the rest of the gaskets off of there, and then we'll go ahead. There's our adjustment. So as we screw that up and down, we're going to knock the plug out so I can adjust it after I'm done. Now while everything's in the bath, we're going to go ahead and take the passenger side throttle body off. This was really giving me a hard time on the crossover tube. I really spent a lot of time getting that cross tube off, but I finally got it. Pull this thing off of the dowel pins. Put some rags in the intake so nothing falls down in the motor while we're doing this. Now we'll start disassembling. We got to take the plug out of the one throttle body. Now we're going to take the little brazing or welding off of this bolt. So you can't turn it from the factory, but this is an adjustment we have to get to. So we'll get that all cleared up. Now we'll go ahead and rebuild the driver's side while the passenger side is in the ultrasonic cleaner. You can see this thing really came out good. Next thing we're going to do is clean up that injector. We'll change the screen on it, put the new O-rings on it. I try to move that screen around so it is not in front of the openings. That's what I'm doing there, was looking. Now we're going to go ahead and put the pressure regulator back in there. You can see I've got the opening out, and that little slide mechanism keeps it in line so you can adjust it. Then we have a washer on the top, and then a metal washer on top of that. We'll go ahead and put the lid on once we have that on. So we'll tighten all that down. Goes pretty straightforward. Now you can see there's the adjustment. There's the adjusting tool. So once you get it together, you just turn that one direction or the other. If you don't have that tool, you can take off those top 5 bolts and turn it and put it back together that way. All depends on if you have the right tools for the job or not. So we'll go ahead and we'll change the washers out on that, and we'll put the fuel connectors back on there. Lastly, we'll clean up the IAC valves, put them on. Now I didn't change out the IAC or the TPS because the car actually ran okay before it came to me. So now we got that one all straightened out. Now let's go ahead and get the passenger side out, get that cleaned up. Right? So we'll go ahead and take these parts out. We're going to let the throttle body sit in there for just a little bit longer while we put together the pulse dampener on the passenger side. Right? So we're going to get the injector in there. We want to get a little WD-40 so those O-rings slide down in there real good. Right? So we're going to put an O-ring on the bottom, a screen on the bottom, another O-ring on the top, and then we're going to put the pulse dampener in. Now see how that one's smooth on the one side? And then to the other side, it has that, it's a bowl shape, so it holds the spring. So that's what the difference is from the driver's side to the passenger side, right? The passenger side is smooth. The driver's side has a little spring tab in it. So can't mix those up. You mix those up, you're going to be in trouble. This is just going to take the pulses out of the fuel pump. That's one of the reasons why we have 2 different injectors in this car, because the pressures are slightly different from one to the other, right? So we'll get that all put together, get that tapped back down, screw it back in. Once we get that screwed in, we'll go ahead and we'll put it onto the throttle body, right? Like I say, this one doesn't have any adjustments underneath of it. So we're just going to put the gasket on there, and we're going to get the throttle body out. We'll get this thing back together. Put the old IACs back in. Normally I do replace both of those IACs because they get slow. Next thing we're going to do is put the car back together, right? So we're going to start on the passenger side, put that one down first. We'll get those, make sure they're on the dowel pins. We'll put the 3 bolts back in. The stud goes on the outside to hold the air cleaner down. And then we'll start the fuel line. And this would be the inlet line. We're going to go ahead and put a little pipe dope on there so it doesn't leak. Tighten that thing down. Once we get that tightened down, then we'll go ahead and we'll move over to the driver's side, right? Now, obviously, I took the paper towels out of the intake. If you don't do that, you're gonna just spray fuel into the paper towels, right? So we'll put the gaskets on that. Then we're going to put this piece of linkage back onto the other throttle body that makes them work together. We'll go ahead and put the bolts back in. We'll screw that down. Once we have that down, then we can go ahead and start to put some of the linkage, the clips that hold the linkage back together and the gas pedal back together. And now we can put the return line on. So now we have the inlet line on and the outlet line on, and I'm making a crossover tube. So I'm not going to use the original crossover tube, and the reason for that is I want to put a gauge in there to adjust the fuel pressure later. Right? So I go out and I bought all the parts to do that. Now we got that done. Next thing I'm going to do is adjust the throttle position sensor. I'm going to have that just over a half a volt. I think it was 5.25 is what I finished up with. So we tighten that down. Next thing I'm going to do is adjust the fuel pressure. So now I got the car running, and I'm looking at the gauge and I'm trying to get the fuel pressure up. Now in this case it's only going to go up to 9 psi because the pump won't put out any more than that. If you change the pump over to a TPI pump, then it will go higher than that. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and balance the throttle bodies, or synchronize the throttle bodies together. So we need 6 inches of water column in each throttle body. So we'll go back and forth. We're going to do the adjustment in the back of the throttle body on the driver's side and the front of the throttle body on the passenger side. And we're just going to keep going back and forth until I get them even at 6, or very close to 6. And then once I have that, then we can move on to the next step, which we'll have to take those paper towels back out of the IAC valves. And then I'm going to put the air cleaner on there. And once I get that vacuum in there, next thing I'm going to do is the back screw on the passenger side. We got to make sure there's a 5/1000 gap between the throttle plate and that bolt. And then after we get that in there, last thing we'll do is put a little Loctite on all 3 of the bolts that we adjusted so they don't move. We'll go ahead, put our air cleaner back together, and now we're starting to wrap this up. Like I said, if you really want an in-depth how-to, I have other videos and I'll put a link to it at the end, and I'll give you a better idea. This is just a quick how-to, and so that's basically what it looks like when it's all back together, right? And here you can hear it purring like a kitten. So runs great. We'll go ahead and wrap this up. So I appreciate you guys watching. Here is the Cal induction is what I'm going to call it under the hood. You got an electric motor that can open and close that hood scoop, and that will draw the air right down into the top of the air cleaner. So that's 82 to 84 Crossfire on the F body cars, and the 82 Corvette is the same. 84 Corvette has a completely different air cleaner. Okay, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Have a great day.